Hello everyone, I'm Aaron, a birding naturalist. Welcome back to my channel. I'm sure we've all seen birds preening, but what are they really doing? What's going on there? Well, so glad you asked. Preening is a set of behaviors that basically just boil down to birds taking care of their feathers. All birds preen, and preening is a really, really important thing for a bird to do. In fact, it's so important that they spend a lot of time doing it. Birds will spend between 10 and 25% of their daytime, their waking active hours, on feather maintenance, preening. But why? Why is it so important? Why devote all this time to this behavior? Well, preening does a few things. One, by keeping feathers in good shape and sort of smoothed and organized, birds can fly. It allows for flight. So that's pretty important if you're a bird. Another thing that preening does is it allows a bird to use its feathers to keep itself warm or cool. By arranging its feathers and making sure that they are organized again and smoothed out and kind of in all the places that the bird wants them to be, a bird can move those feathers around and trap air in close to their body and hold in body heat, or sort of fluff those feathers out and encourage air currents to move across the bird's skin and take heat away. So, depending on where a bird is and what a bird is feeling, it can help regulate its internal temperature. A very important thing for feathers for a bird. And another thing that preening does is it allows feathers to stay dry. Having a bird's body get wet can be very problematic for a bird. It means it has to expend a lot of extra energy to stay warm. It can be very stressed. In really cold environments, if the bird then gets wet and cold, it can even cause death. So it's really important for most birds to stay dry under their feathers, which means the feathers themselves have to stay waterproof. Now, this waterproofing component is interesting for a few reasons. One is the one prominent way that a bird preens to accomplish all of these benefits of preening: flight, temperature control, staying dry, is to use something called its preen gland, or officially its uropygial gland. It's a small gland sort of up on top of the tail, just above the base of the tail. And uropygial glands secrete oils. And so you'll often see birds reaching back to their uropygial glands, rubbing their beaks across it to collect that oil onto their beaks, and then spreading those oils onto all their feathers and the rest of their body. What this oil does for a long time was thought that it was waterproofing the feathers, that oil and water don't really mix. And so by taking these oils and spreading them across, sort of in thin layers, across feathers, that would make the feather waterproof. But it turns out it's a little more complicated than that and a little more interesting, I think. Predominantly because it turns out it's not really the oils that are waterproofing feathers. It's not really the oils that are allowing the bird to maintain all those smooth connections between all the little structures in the feathers, the barbs and the barbules that all have to interlock in just the right way to make sure the feather keeps the shape and the sort of consistency, the suppleness or the fluffiness or whatever the feather is supposed to be doing. Whatever that feather's function is, it's maintained in part by adding these preen oils. But it's not specifically for waterproofing. Rather, what waterproofs a feather is actually the structure themselves. All those barbs and barbules interlocking in just the right way actually create a structural barrier. They interlock so tightly that it prevents water from breaching that barrier. And that is what keeps feathers waterproof and what keeps birds dry. So these oils, they spread across the feathers, and they do absolutely help condition the feathers to make sure that feather maintenance is beneficial and sort of easier to do, more effective. But it's not the oils themselves that are waterproofing the feathers. And this can be seen actually by a few different examples. One is experimentally. People have put little caps over birds' uropygial glands so they can't access their preen oils, and then seeing what effects they have on waterproofness of feathers. And it turns out, at least in the short term, there's really no effect on them at all. That birds that have full access to their preen glands have feathers that, of course, are waterproof, but birds that don't have access to their preen glands also have pretty waterproof feathers. Doesn't really seem to matter very much. It's the preening itself, it's the straightening and the organizing for that structure. That's the important thing to keep feathers waterproof. And possibly an even better example of this is to look at birds that really don't use much preen oil at all. So birds like pigeons and doves, and herons and egrets, and parrots and macaws, they have a different mechanism for taking care of their feathers when they preen. Those birds all create a special kind of feather. They grow this very special kind of feather. It's called powder down. And like other forms of down, it's very fluffy, very light, very delicate feathers. And the powder comes in because these feathers have evolved to disintegrate. They grow out very fine, very small little structures, and those very small structures break apart into this almost sort of talcum powdery-like substance. And these birds gather that powder up with their bills and spread that out across all their feathers to maintain the structure and suppleness and strength of their feathers, so that those birds can then have the flight and the thermal regulation and the waterproof benefits that preening gives. So again, this is a group of birds, several groups of birds that don't really rely on preen oil and instead use powder down instead. So I think that that forms a really fascinating example of kind of an alternate strategy to still get the same benefits and the same results of preening. So preening, super important, yields so many important benefits to the birds. It's also a really fun behavior just to watch, and a really fun behavior, a set of behaviors to understand. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned a little something about this fun behavior that birds do, preening. And if you like this kind of content, subscribe to the channel. Until next time, enjoy the natural world.